Dragon Age Veilguard previews are here, and we're going to be looking at a variety of them. We have very mixed responses, some saying it's a Mass Effect 2 moment, while others are saying they were not very impressed. The lackluster combat being one of the things I am seeing criticized. Also saw in my live chat somebody quoting Matty Plays saying this is the longest he's ever been able to play a preview. So that is, I think, a good sign that they are confident in the content. So we do this from time to time. The minute an embargo drops on reviews or previews, we try to put together basically a roundup for you, and I try to give you a very, very broad look from the positive to the negative to the in-between. So if you like this kind of content, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the like button. And our members are kind of going crazy. I said we were going to kind of like, hey, let's give up on the goal for this week, but apparently they're going to make a go for it. Stonespire gifted 4 right off the rip. Han shot first, and so did you. They literally did this while the stream was waiting, so they took us to 125. So I do owe you guys 5. I'll continue to make good on that. And then Siege Master gifted a 5 and took us to 130. And I am counting all upgrades as double, so we're actually at 132 because Rob V upgraded to Member Plus. Thank you guys so much for doing that. I did say we were going to hold off, but if you guys decide to go crazy today and you want to turn Friday night into a members only community game night, feel free. I'll have it up there for you. Let's check out the first one because I feel like Eurogamer is really making a big claim here. They're saying, after playing it all day, Dragon Age The Veilguard feels like the series Mass Effect 2 moment. And Sheriff Bruce Lee has thrown in as well and drops a 5 bomb and then a single from Joker Quinn. Okay, well, if you guys feel like going crazy, let's see what you guys can do today. That's a 5, which would take us to 7, and then an 8, and then a 9. So we're now at 9, 139. We're now at 149, a 10 bomb from Dylan Butler. Everyone, I guess, was holding off all week, and now y'all are going to go crazy. Let's dive into the first one here. If you guys go crazy with the gifteds, I'll do my best to both read the previews as well as say thank you. And if you get a gifted membership, be sure to dive in. And I'm going to jump down here, and it says, just as Mass Effect 2 streamlined the elbowy role-playing of Mass Effect 1, honing it into a pacier cinematic action game, so does Veilguard do this for Dragon Age. There are no pretensions at the beginning of an open-world game as an Inquisition anymore. The Veilguard is a narrower mission-based game, a phrase I hear a few times over the course of the day, and because of it, the pace never sags. Whatever you do, there's a feeling of purpose and shape. Missions crescendo to spectacular boss fights, and the combat encounters that lead to them feel considered and satisfying. Traversal sections with puzzles and zip wires and slides and balance beams. There's never any dead time. Always there's momentum, and at its best, it's a breathlessly exciting ride. Now, thank you, Patrick Q, for gifting a member as well. Listen, this actually is one of the reasons that I have been interested in this game, right? I actually like what I've seen. What I've seen recently. What I've seen recently is that they are basically saying we're not trying to build this huge open world game. We're not trying to build this massive, huge thing where you're going to like be going from this section to that section and to the rest. We are quite literally building a game that has that linear structure in mind. And more, I actually like games like this. Like, I'm kind of over the massive open world game, and I owe you guys 10 members, which I'm going to do right now before I forget. I'm kind of over the game where I've got to go everywhere and check everything and do everything. Like, the open world games just tend to really turn me off anymore. I just want to kind of beeline it. Like, as much as I enjoyed Horizon Forbidden West, I remember just really struggling with kind of like wanting to go everywhere, explore everything, see everything. Like, I was more beelining the story. That ended up hurting my progression in Horizon Forbidden West, but we'll see if this actually translates into what everybody else thinks as well. Eurogamer continuing here says, to me it screams confidence. Sometimes the Dragon Age team seems to have lacked that in the past. This is a series that's grappled with its identity ever since it began, and that's changed hugely from one installment to the next. Pulled this way and that by the demands of the time. But here we are with a beautifully baggage-less single-player RPG, and a sense that behind it, BioWare is doing what it believes is its best at. And okay, yes, It's notable that the lines between Dragon Age and Mass Effect are blurring, whereas before, the teams and games felt distinct, but there's no denying the result effect. The Veilguard is good. It's very good. Guys, take a quick second. Thanks for the strong turnout already. We've only been streaming for 5 minutes. There's already a bunch of you here. Smash that like button. We are looking at the Dragon Age Veilguard previews, and we're looking at Eurogamers, which is one of the positive ones. There are some negative ones that we will be looking at, though. Not everybody was so impressed. We begin our demo day at the very beginning of the game in character customization, which I am pleased to report is as feature-rich as I hoped and expected it to be. There are 4 races to choose from: human, Quinary, dwarf, elf, and you can customize the shapes of their bodies as well as intricately sculpt their faces. I am particularly fond of the triangular slide around the gauge for overall shape, which is fun to play with and see the effects of it in real time, and of the hair, which is some of the most believable looking hair I've seen in a game. More unusual features include customizable bulge size for exactly what you think, a melanin slider, and a cataract slider for the eyes, or for the eye or eyes. You can specify which. There's a lot of detail here. So they actually have this, they're keen to release the Dragon Age Veilguard character creator before launch, so it looks like that you might be able to go, let's actually check that out. Hang on 1 second. Let's take a look here. Okay, so this is what it looks like. This is one of the sections. BioWare has suspiciously coy when asked if they're considering releasing a standalone character creator before the game's full release. Okay, so they're not really answering the question, so they might. So if you want to get a look at that, you might have to check out some videos with it being interacted with. And if you haven't checked out Plucky Squire yet, there's a little trailer for it. Very, very cool little game that I am very, very primed to finish. My daughter's really excited about it too. I showed her a trailer. Another notable feature during character creation is the ability to import your Inquisitor from Dragon Age Inquisition, or to create a new one, which involves customizing them visually from cycling through major decisions from the previous game to choose what you would have done. What role that Inquisitor will then play in the game, I don't know and didn't see, but it's a nice carryover feature and does a good job of reminding you of what came before. It was 10 years ago. Incidentally, this feature is in place of the keep for the Veilguard, that standalone choose your backstory website Inquisition pulled data from. So it looks like creating a new one, which involves customizing them visually and cycling through major decisions from the previous game to choose what you would have done. I actually think that's a really clever way of making it to where, like, a person who may have not played the other games can still create their own backstory, which is a great way of doing like a story so far, but also doing like a, hey, your character has a backstory that's going to have an impact here. Now, again, they're not sure what exactly that's going to impact, but I think that that's actually a smart play to give people a way to learn story so far and to select their own backstory as well, to sort of stretch into this game. The other important thing you do while customizing your character is pick a faction to belong to in the game, of which there are several, and from which your main companions will hail. Some you'll be familiar with from previous games, like the Grey Wardens or the Ansevin Crows, but the others are new, and they offer a storied background to layer upon your character, as well as mechanical benefits in play. Grey Wardens, for instance, deal increased damage against the Darkspawn, of which there are many, this being Dragon Age and all. Then they have slightly increased base health and defense. Being a Grey Warden also enables you to choose Grey Warden dialogue options whenever they appear. It all reminds me somewhat of the origin stories from Dragon Age Origins, which I like, and there are several references to my faction in the parts of the game that I play. It makes my background feel seen. So it seems like there's actually impact on the game. Now, maybe not necessarily going to, like, you'll have a vastly different experience than me, but it is impacting the game. I choose my rook to be a dwarf rogue, after which I play the section of the game that you've seen demoed in the trailers, up to and past the point of meeting Solas and beyond, a good hour or so beyond, which means I know what happens to Varric, though I can't say. I see a new lighthouse base and the Arlathan Forest. I don't know how to pronounce a lot of this stuff because I didn't play a lot of Dragon Age, sorry. And the crossroads beyond the Alluvian Mirror. I adventure in the city of Treviso and in an underwater city, and I struggle through eerie, blighted, infested towns. Okay, I do a lot. The Veilguard provides it all with a variety of visual spectacle. No two areas feel the same. Okay. I try all 3 character classes over the course of the day at varying character levels, and I think Rogue remains my favorite. It's to do with the speed of the class. The way it twirls and tumbles around the battlefield gives the action an almost Ninja Gaiden-like feel, and there is never-ending simple pleasure in trying to land headshots with the bow. The Warrior comes to a close second with a Captain America-like shield toss and ridiculously fun dropkick, run up, and bam, off the edge you go. And the Mage finishes third, partly because it lacks the physicality and responsiveness of the other two, though it is by no means lifeless. The Veilguard actually plays more like a single-player action game in combat than a traditional RPG and the Dragon Age games before it. I went back to Inquisition recently and was startled by how slow combat felt by comparison and how static it seemed with characters standing around. There's none of that here. All the classes have a full complement of combat abilities. They can all dodge or dash and perform some kind of range attack as standard, as well as block and attack with light or medium hits and charge variations of them, and you will frequently have to use all of them to survive. You're never safe, even at the back. Enemies won't leave you alone. They'll teleport or dash to get at you, closing gaps and hurling projectiles at you, especially bosses, which you'll usually face in semi-confined areas. There's a lot of running and dodge rolling required to deal with them, and it can lead to some very intense encounters. Note, however, there are more difficulty options in the Veilguard than I've seen in a BioWare game too, so should you want to adjust it. Now, we're going to read another preview that had a very different take on the combat, so we will see. Guys, take a quick second and smash the like button. There's already over 400 of you here. Let's try to get to 200 likes really, really quickly. It'll help more people find this. If they're looking for Dragon Age Veilguard previews, they can get them here. Dragon Age The Veilguard actually is not coming out for another month or so, and we will also probably look at the reviews when they land as well, because previews are always a small sampling. But it does sound like they got to play quite a bit of the game. You also don't have direct control over what your companions do this time, so you don't tab between them to play as them anymore. They will happily unleash their own barrage of standard attacks without any input. You do, however, have some control over their special abilities, which you can deploy tactically to trigger devastating combination attacks. On controller, I did try mouse and keyboard, but the controller felt far more comfortable fit for the Veilguard. You press a shoulder button, a bumper. I've never heard them called shoulder buttons. To bring up time-pausing radial menu where yours and your companion's special abilities are shown. Here, the game will clearly highlight any of the abilities that work well against the enemy that you're facing and which abilities will combo with someone else's. It's big and obvious. You can't miss what it's suggesting that you do. Set it all up and big damage numbers will pop up on the screen alongside dramatic visual effects. Combined attacks are hugely effective and incredibly satisfying to do. There is, though, a bit of a wait in between using them, either as you recover your class's main resource or wait for the abilities to refresh. I'm sure you get to know the game better. You'll find and be able to manage resource gain in such a way to do special abilities more often, but I find myself waiting around a fair bit with nothing very effective that I can do, particularly when playing as a mage. I have my default attacks. I like the proton pack-like energy beam, but I still feel ineffective a lot of the time. I should add that each class has 3 specializations plus a load of miscellaneous skills and abilities interlinking them. It's a pleasingly large skill tree, so it's more than possible it's the build that I didn't gel with rather than the class, but the mage was still my least favorite of the classes on the day. Combat in general, though, is great, full of energy and heft and impact, and a need for you to be paying attention. And because of the mission-based structure of the game, any encounter you come across is there for a specific reason. It's not happenstance, so there's a considered mix of enemy types and placements to make the battle interesting, which in my experience is almost always was. This kind of consideration carries over into the level design. Again, because you're taking the route the game knows you'll take, it made sure the route is an interesting one, so you'll be negotiating balance beams between buildings, jumping across platforms, climbing, sliding down inclines like Commander Shepard, and doing a spot of environmental puzzling in between. It's never just running from point A to point B. Yo, what's good, Derek? Congratulations, man. I saw the pictures. Oh, not all of them, but I saw some pictures on Twitter. Been super busy, but I did open up Twitter. And I'm sorry, not Twitter. I saw the pictures on Facebook. And if you guys, again, hey, if you're listening to this and you're enjoying the show, man, take a quick second, hit the thumbs up. People kind of scrambled and gifted today. We kind of slowed down on the week, but I said if you guys are going to scramble, I'd put it back up. And I already gifted the 10 that I owe you, so thank you everybody for doing that. In the city of Traversal, where I meet the assassin companion Lucanus, a place of nighttime markets and softly lit lanterns, we zipline across rooftops at dizzying speed, giving the whole place a sense of size and the levels a sense of space. Of course, it's an illusion. You'll notice the same routes being used again and again, and though the city appears densely populated and buzzing, you can't really interact with the people that you see there. It's just set dressing. But it's beautiful set dressing nonetheless, and how interactive does it really need to be? So some people might take issue with this. They might say, hey, it would have been really nice to have this feel like a more interactive environment and not just a set piece, but I think that this is totally fine given that they're making a game that is more linear in its design. And some people might not like the fact that, yeah, I agree with you, Crowded House. It very much looked like you were just running from point A to point B, so I'm not quite sure how it's not that, if they say it's more of a corridor, linear path than an open world. There's a lot about Veilguard that falls into the category of thinking, does an RPG really need it? You no longer stop to loot bodies in the game, for instance, which speeds up the flow of a level significantly. Instead, loot has been tidied away to chests, which you rip open like a God of War, with God of War like glee, and which, if they bestow you with new equipment, often combine with pieces you already have to upgrade them. It's sort of a fantasy kind of upcycling, which means you're never left with useless odds and ends, and you're never nose down in your inventory organizing things, which again smooths play considerably. Yeah, see, some people are going to like that, but also not like that. Depends on the player. Does that make it any less of an RPG? That's the question that will surround Dragon Age The Veilguard, I think. Some of my fears in this regard were allayed by what I saw. There's actually more companion interaction than I thought there would be. You do still have the opportunity to equip them across your 4 equipment slots, and though you don't level them up individually, there is an equivalent bond level that you share with them that grants similar kinds of abilities. You increase this bond level by taking them out on missions with you. You can take up to 2 of them, and by talking to them back at base. I eventually meet all of the game's companions during my play sessions, though I spend the most time with Harding, Neve, Balera, and Lucanus, all of whom I find interesting, which is a good sign. I particularly like Lucanus, a fiery Latino assassin who has shifting personality, shall we say, and I find Balara's oddball behavior intriguing. They are not the obvious choices, and they're well characterized and brought to life, if a touch hammy, though it's a hammy series. You can of course romance them too, any of them apparently, and I dabble in it a bit of it, hitting the big heart icon in dialogue while talking to Harding, and then Neve, and then Lucanus. I'm not fussy. It prompted some tender moments, but nothing steamier. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be like a Baldur's Gate 3, where you're hopping in the sack. Maybe you will, but I don't think this is the kind of game that's going to show it to the degree that Baldur's Gate 3 did. Most of this happens back at the impressive new base, the Lighthouse, which is located inside the Fade itself, the place magic is drawn from. It's a place of floating platforms and improbable architecture. Then and over time, each of your companions will occupy different dormant parts of it, where you'll venture to meet them. To this end, it's a nice time-saving feature whereby a kind of floating light illuminates outside their buildings to denote that they have a story moment within, which saves you traipsing around. And I like how the doors fly open automatically as you near them. You'll be able to customize the lighthouse in some way, I believe, though BioWare is staying determinedly close-lipped about it now. This is your home, and it's where you and your companions will cozy up around the fire for group scenes and discussions, and where you'll receive quests as scrolls on pedestals, which is convenient. It's also where you'll venture forth on adventures through the Illuvian mirror in the basement into the crossroads beyond. It's full of detail, and from what I have seen, every bit of a match for Inquisition's show-stopping castle in the mountains, Skyhold. I have a good idea of how the Veilguard plays then, but it's not enough time to answer some of the questions that still nag me, such as how much depth overall will there be? Dialogue choices to me felt more like different flavors of the same answer rather than options for differing paths, and overall thrust of the game felt similar, one path with deviations rather than distinctly different ones. There are big choices. There are choices that change the fate of entire cities, but these are main quest moments carefully written in. They're not the many smaller choices that make up a meaningful tapestry of your own, or of our own. I've only played one act of the 3-act game, though, so there's a lot more I haven't seen, and what I have seen was condensed into action-packed missions and sequences, with the exception of the slightly more open-ended crossroads area, which you will return to time and time again. I didn't see much in the way of downtime, because there wasn't time for it. So I haven't seen the quieter moments of the game. Regardless, I'm elated to see BioWare in this kind of form again. As a cinematic action game, The Veilguard roars with quality, and as a role-playing game, it provides a welcome refreshment of the density of Baldur's Gate 3, which it will no doubt be compared against, though perhaps it would be better considered a compliment to. Based on what I've played, I've absolutely no doubt The Veilguard will be an enjoyable ride. My only concern is how much of a memorable one it will be. Yeah, so it seems to me like the game is going to offer a very, very approachable, very straightforward game. And like, I don't want to read this one just yet. This is another positive one. They spent 7 hours and they would like to spend 100 more. This is the one that I want to read. So PCGamesN.com is saying, after playing for 7 hours, Dragon Age The Veilguard just isn't it. It brings Thedas to life in ways its predecessors could only dream of, but its combat and exploration are a letdown. Now, this is one thing, that I was concerned about after the very, very first review, where the combat just looked incredibly rote and not that exciting. So character creator, we don't need to retread that. Okay, flash of brilliant white. Okay, scene. That's the first time I've been able to play it. Dispatching. Okay, here we go. Attacks feel slow and clunky. It seems like everything around me is moving quickly while I'm stuck in slow motion. Thankfully, I eventually have an option to switch it out for a glowing orb and sharpened knife. Think a mixture of the traditional rogue and spellcaster mechanics. Given my aforementioned penchant for rogues, I jump at the offer, buying into the game's promise of faster, lower-powered attacks. Unfortunately, while this playstyle looks good and is, on paper, pretty damn cool, I don't see much difference in speed. Dashes provide more mobility, but my general squishiness and low damage offset the negligible speed boost. All in all, Orb and Dagger is an exciting new innovation on Dragon Age's traditional cast spell, smash staff into the ground mage gameplay, but it isn't strong enough for me to make the switch. Having felled a particularly nasty pride demon and disrupted Solas's mysterious ritual, I'm whisked away to our home base, the lighthouse, trapped in the heart of the Fade. The location is somewhat reminiscent of Origin's Circle of Magi, with its sprawling shelves and countless dusty tomes, but outside, gnarled bridges made of twisted tree branches lead to our companions' rooms. It's certainly a level up from the Inquisition's haven. But I'm not here for long. A mysterious alluvion calls me to the basement. Beyond it ripples. Okay, and we go away. Environment's beautiful. Okay, but as you delve deeper into this ancient forested world, things begin to change. Towering oak trees have huge pestule-like growths attached to them, glowing an eerie skin-like pink as they pulsate. It's the blight that we're all so familiar with, but its inherent connection to the two now-escaped elven gods grants it a lifelike parasitic feel versus pure, unadulterated death. Okay, so they're setting the environment here. Let's see. That's before we go to this crossing. This is just a summary of what they did. Our maitre d', okay. This encounter slakes my vengeance, but also alleviates a few of my broader concerns about the Veilguard. Back at Summer Game Fest, I asked executive producer John Epler about bringing back some of the Origins grit, as the initial reveal trailer felt a little bit more high fantasy than the dark, twisted world and the love of the first game. Demeta certainly confirmed that we'll see some blood, guts, and gore in the Veilguard, and it proves that you'll make meaningful, oftentimes controversial choices as the Blight squeezes the life out of the Demetas. It breathes its fresh excitement into me. This is the darkness I was hoping for. That sense of dread also carries beyond the prologue. At one point, I have to make a choice that alters the very fabric of Thedas and involves battling a particularly nasty dragon. As part of Lucanus' companion quest, I'm thrust into a watery bowels of an undersea prison that then sent after its keeper, who just so happens to be bathing in blood. The grit and grime is brought to life in stunning detail, and I want more of it, okay? At least that's what I thought as I approached the aforementioned bathhouse. This time in the guise of as a human rogue, I take on Lucanus' arch nemesis, intent on bringing her down. While the rogue's combat is fluid and dynamic, characterized by quick attacks and high mobility, it's all but useless in this fight. Our blood-covered foe attacks using heavy-hitting projectiles, meaning I can't get close to her, and instead of going on the attack, my two companions, Lucanus and Tash, simply follow me around the arena. You can't control companions directly in Veilguard, instead chaining attacks together to form combos via the game's tactical screen. While every combo appears to have the same animation regardless of which characters and abilities are involved, they do deal some serious damage. See, that's a little worrying if one of the center stages of the combat is that you're constantly doing these combos, but if the combos don't actually animate any differently, that might really start to feel incredibly bland. In this fight, however, I found that Lucanus and Tash would combo, deal the damage, and then return to my side versus continuing to fight. This wasn't an issue across the board, but in this encounter, it was a real killer. Sounds like they've got some AI issues to work out. Your AI should not just be straight up following you around. As a result, most of my time is spent hiding behind pillars as my health bar screeches angrily, popping out to take the odd shot with my bow, only to realize the boss has either healed up or is currently immune. As you've likely guessed, it's also the first time I died during my playthrough, and I'm surprised to be offered a revive via the death screen. Unlike in Inquisition, companions can't resurrect you. Instead, revives are dished out numerically. I had 2 during my playthrough. It's unclear whether or not you can increase that number by buying scrolls and potions. Either way, it's a bizarre decision. The companions are there, so why not use them? That's the through line of my time in Dragon Age The Veilguard. While Thedas looks better than ever, and I've finally caught a glimpse of the canals of Antiva's Treviso, I don't know how to say any of these words, sorry, Dragon Age fans, a state I've been desperate to see ever since I romanced Severin and Origins, the beauty is marred by often middling gameplay, especially if you're a mage. Now that lines up with what what Eurogamer said, that like the mage is pretty bad. Austin from the Skill Up team said the combat was like Anthem? Really? Guys, thanks so much for being here, man. 450 people hanging out. We've only been streaming for about 25 minutes. Take a quick second and smash the like button, man. Let's get to 200. Let's get to that milestone. It'll really help out. I only tried Rogue and Mage. Instances grew progressively harder, and Warrior was never been my thing. One of the two, the Rogue, is easily the most enjoyable. It's fairly slick and tactically tricky, whereas Mage feels slow, boring, and squishy. Where Mages once ruled Thedas tier lists, Rogue is finally getting in its place in the sun, albeit to the detriment of my other preferred class. The missions I played also felt railroaded, and while level designer Francois Caput assures me that these things open up as you progress, I spent much of my time going from one spot to another on a predetermined path. While it's preferable in Inquisition's MMORPG sprawl and grind, the world still feels a little lifeless. In the sections I played, there were no NPCs asking for help, no weird little creatures to hunt. It's get from point A to B, achieve your goal, and head back to the lighthouse. And a 5-bomb comes in from Behemoth. You guys are seemingly not letting this thing die. I thought we were going to just give up on the goal, but you guys are still going for it. Thank you, Behemoth. See if we can get a little bit of a train going today. You guys got a long way to go, but we've had bigger days before. We'll see. While its characters and narrative world building feel realized, Dragon Age The Veilguard's combat and exploration don't quite sing during my preview. Perhaps looking back at Origins and Dragon Age 2, that's always been the case. Lots of us play for the story and forgive the moment-to-moment action. But there are flashes of greatness in the Rogue that prove BioWare can still do cool stuff. And the world itself is stunning to behold, but very look, don't touch. If your aim is to play through the story and romance your favorite Dragon Age Veilguard companions, then I think you'll walk away satisfied. As someone who's waited for a decade, however, my expectations are now muted. So this is why I like to read a variety, because honestly, the way her name's Lauren, the way Lauren describes the combat here is very much what I was worried about. It very much looks sort of bland and rote and rehearsed. Here, let me get this a little bit bigger, and then I'll just move to the other side. So VG247 is saying, Dragon Age The Veilguard is so much more than you think it is, and it channels BioWare's best. So I think we are getting people that think very highly of this. So we definitely want to take in all perspectives here. And this is from Alex Donaldson. He played for 7 hours. Okay, everybody played for 7 hours, it looks like. Now, when he saw it back in Summer Game Fest, I came away with the impression of a role-playing series nipped, tucked, and truncated to meet the demands of an action game-driven market. But after playing the game at length, that feeling has dissipated. The Veilguard is far more than EA's marketing has managed to illuminate. All right, so apparently the marketing, hasn't done this game any favors. And I just once again want to tell these websites that the way they design their websites is so egregiously stupid that it makes it almost impossible to. I can't read your words if you're bringing you're bringing this stuff down. Like, quit bringing the videos down with you. Stop it. Back in June, I compared Dragon Age's latest outing to Final Fantasy 16. Now, that was a comparison I made that it looked a little bit more on rails like FF16. Oh, Game Rant's calling it a Game of the Year contender. Well, we're definitely going to want to read what they have to say. Actually, the Veilguard... Wait, what just happened? Why do I have two of these? Oh, I have two of these open. I have two streams open. I was like, what is happening? I was worried that I didn't end the previous stream. Maybe the negative viewer didn't know how to use the activator and primer combos. Veilguard appears to have navigated those choppy waters with a far defter hand, and the result left me absolutely chomping at the bit to experience the final full thing. Let me put it this way. Dragon Age Origins was conceived as a spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate. Dragon Age 2 structurally borrowed much from the first Mass Effect. Dragon Age Inquisition offered an open-world take on the post-Skyrim pre-Witcher 3 world. The Veilguard's greatest inspiration, at least in structure, appears to be both Mass Effect 2 and 3. These are BioWare's finest games, so that's no bad thing. And then layered atop this is a far deeper and far more D&D faithful RPG progression offering. So this is another, review pointing to Mass Effect 2 and 3. At least Mass Effect 2 from the one review that we read. Let's talk about the overall game structure first. This is very much still in that BioWare wheelhouse. This time around, your version of the Normandy or Skyhold is called the Lighthouse. Here you'll hang out with your companions, advance your relationships, craft, take stock, and generally exercise your leadership chops as Rook, the de facto boss of the Veilguard. So far, so familiar. When you leave the Lighthouse, you'll be going on zones. Okay, we know all this. They're not making actual number size comparisons to Inquisition. I saw a number of areas. You can sense that they didn't want more linear... Okay. You can sense the developers didn't want the more linear action stages to simply be a rush of enemies, and so much is accomplished through visual storytelling that enlivens the experience of each. One quest sees the characters in a sort of magical air bubble underwater, exploring flooded ruins. Outside the barrier, fish and aquatic flora shimmer in the haze. In places, the magical barrier holding back the sea is at a breaking point, water perilously dripping from the cracks around the surface. As well as fighting, zones like this are punctuated with little puzzles. You know the type: crystals to destroy, to unlock doors, or other type of crystals that you'll need to escort the power up some magical device. Okay, this is all stuff that we've read. All of this feels, like I've said, quite a lot the second and third Mass Effect games, but there's only one area where Dragon Age's fourth entry sets itself apart, in the nuts and bolts of the crunchy, satisfying role-playing systems. Put simply, there's a hell of a lot here. Moment to moment, this might have a touch of full-blown action game about it. At times, it can even look a little bit like Devil May Cry. The action feels legitimate and satisfying moment to moment too. With that said, under the hood beats the brave heart of a full-on, full-fat role-playing game. This does not at all sound like what the other people are saying. They're saying that the action feels legitimate and satisfying moment to moment, and that under the hood is a brave heart of a full-on, full-fat role-playing game. I didn't get the impression from the other reviews, I'm sorry, the other previews that were saying, like, a lot of this has been streamlined. You're not picking up lots of loot. You know, everything feels very simplified. That doesn't sound like a full, fat role-playing game. I'm not saying that as a negative. I find that appealing. I don't want to look at all that stuff. Yeah, Devil May Cry, I don't know, that's a tall comparison. I probably should have seen this coming. When I spoke to the Veilguard's director earlier this summer, she compared what they had built to Final Fantasy X and XII's beloved sphere and licensed grid setups. When we spoke again during the preview event, we ended up nerding out about Xenosaga. She's the real deal, but seeing her RPG proclivities expressed in-game is a whole other matter than simply hearing about it. It's there, it's real, and it provides a whole new layer of possibility into each combat encounter and to each linear action stage. Yeah, Eurogamer said it felt more like an action game than an RPG. They were talking more about the loot when they were talking about that, so maybe this individual preview is talking more about the skill trees, because the skill tree screenshots that we've seen do look pretty crazy. The mage's skill grid, for instance, has over 100 skills spread across 6 subsections, and that's without counting 3 mutually exclusive class specialization trees at the extremes of the different build directions you can go in. It's up to you what path you beat through the tree's interconnected web of abilities, with specialization you can go for, and what sort of combat experience you want to have. So yeah, like I said, they're talking about the skills. Yeah, the same 3-hit combo over and over equals Devil May Cry. I mean, maybe when you invest in all these different skills, the combat can really change. A mage could focus on skills that give you battlefield control, arresting the movement options of enemies to entrap them, or you could become a spellblade, mixing melee and magic by pairing your magical staff with an enchanted dagger for up-close assaults. The options are myriad. There's similar breadth across the 3 classes, warrior, mage, and rogue, so that's 3 sprawling, unique player character skill trees to toy with across multiple playthroughs. Like, yeah, this does seem like it's giving a different perspective. My question would be, if you go in and you make these changes, these adjustments, and you do very different builds, is it having a direct impact on how combat flows, or is it just changing your damage numbers? Right? If the animations are the same, if the combos feel the same, you know, and you're just holding something different, and the numbers are just different, I don't know if that's going to really satisfy people that are looking for, as this thing says, a full-fat RPG. That could potentially make people say it doesn't feel deep enough. You know, it doesn't feel like they've added enough or enhanced things enough. This isn't exactly earth-shattering innovation. It's stuff that we've seen before. With that said, it's sort of a mechanical depth that has rarely been paired with RPGs that structure the rest of the game in a more approachable bite-sized action-adventure manner. Usually the baby of the mechanical role-playing depth gets tossed out with the bathwater, but not so here. So it sounds like they're saying they did take a more action-adventure style, but they didn't throw out the depth of a skill tree with it. Crucially, this sort of RPG system has enough depth that you should be able to crack the game open like an egg. You don't have to do that, of course, but for the min-maxers among you, this certainly appears to be the sort of game you'll be able to carefully build game-breaking setups in between the skill trees and the gear that's on offer. It's the sort of game where a single new piece of armor you find might have some bonus that'll send you to craft an entirely new build designed to maximize its bonus. The Veilguard is built for this too, making respecking and refunding skill points easy and unlimited, encouraging wild experimentation. So there's meat on the bone. Don't let trailers that focus on quippy, sexy characters that you'll want to romance and helm-splitting combat fool you. The style is there, but so too is the substance. Yeah, so it seems like maybe they also are in agreement here that they should have done a better job with the marketing. We were continuing to see that as a potential issue here, that the marketing feels like sort of like plucky and goofy, and yet the game offers some pretty significant depth, but it doesn't necessarily sound like the other reviews were saying that. It sounded like the other reviews were saying, this is very much an action game, and not necessarily a game with tons of depth. So I am kind of curious where the game lands. Like, is it going to land more in the middle? Are these reviewers coming with very, very different expectations? Is that why they're reviewing it very differently? Like, did somebody expect just pure action adventure? So the very presence of a skill tree like that is making them say, holy cow, this is pretty significant. Sorry, just a spam call. I thought it was a real call. When I call that stuff style too, I want to be clear. It's not all surface. The characters, the world, the narrative, they're all substantive too. There's bravery and taking the series in new places on show for one. There's some gentle shaving off of some of the sharper edges, sometimes in the form of lovely quality of life changes, like in-game map making is absolutely clear when a companion has something new to say, but other times in slightly more controversial streamlining, like conversation options now basically always boiling down to nice, sarcastic, or tough options. There's things you can't be judged in a day's hands-on, of course. The developer says it's proud to have structured the game around companions this time. They call them load-bearing pillars of the entire experience. The logic, it's explained, is that BioWare is really good at doing companions, so why not structure the whole game specifically around them? It makes sense. It can't be judged on just a slice of the game, but for what it's worth, after a day with them, I did begin to feel like this might be the best Dragon Age ensemble yet. The story had me intrigued, too. The star of the show remains how the game plays, though. Combat feels good, the rogue is ridiculous, the RPG systems have surprising depth, the entire game is just given more than I expected. In fact, the game's biggest sin so far is simply that jump and the interact button are one and the same, a pet hate of mine, but I can forgive that, especially if the rest of the experience lives up to the first extended hands-on. Roll on October. Let's read the one that thinks it's a Game of the Year contender. If you guys haven't taken a second to hit the like button, also hit the $ at the bottom of the chat. If you are a paying member here, you may have a membership renewal to celebrate. And if you have a member plus or a VIP, then you are able to help us with the weekly goal, which again, we've said we're probably not going to hit the weekly goal this week, but I'm letting you guys own that if you want it. Yes, here, so we have Game Rant's article calling it The Veilguard is a definite Game of the Year contender. Based on what we've read today, I think that that's probably not true, but I've been waiting for this day forever since Inquisition in 2014, so obviously we have a big fan here. There's so much left to experience. I'm counting the days to release. But 6 hours in Dragon Age The Veilguard is 6 hours filled with thrills, anticipation, and utter horror as the threats continue to compound. During my preview, I was able to play 5 distinct sections of the game, changing each time between warrior, mage, and rogue classes to get a full understanding of how they work. There were cuts between these sections, hopefully sparing me the worst spoilers. Broadly speaking, this preview covered the prologue, the introduction to the Crossroads, Lucanus' recruitment and second mission, a major decision, and Wysop Forest, all of which are part of Act 1 in The Veilguard. All right. Character creation feels so much better. We don't really care about the character creation. We've read about that quite a bit already. Grey Wardens, okay. So they're still picking character stuff here. Here we go. Combat. All right. This is what I really want to know. They think this thing's Game of the Year contender. Let's read what they have to say about combat. Let me get the text a little bit bigger for you guys. Dragon Age has never had consistent combat, and it's never been a major selling point of the series. Dragon Age Origins was much more tactical. Dragon Age 2 was much more action-focused, and Dragon Age Inquisition tried to hybridize those into a game that was less tactical and less action-focused than either predecessor. It worked, but Dragon Age The Veilguard appears completely different on the surface. I know my first concern when seeing Dragon Age The Veilguard's gameplay was the reduction to 2 companions and the fact that there were fewer quick slots than before. But when I went hands-on with it, it was clear that I was wrong about how these changes impacted combat. So it seems like a lot of people were... looking at the combat and thinking similarly as the rest of us, that it just didn't look that good. Dragon Age Veilguard has 3 classes. Okay, we know all this. Each class, okay, we know all this. Okay, we know all this. That's just descriptive. Okay, here we go. As a mage, the barrier spell is what really caught my attention. Dragon Age Veilguard skill trees can modify these actions further, and one prime example of this is how I could trigger a mind blast as a mage while having an active barrier with the right trait in the skill tree. In past games, spells such as barrier and mind blast would have taken up a quick slot to use in combat, but that's not true here. While there are only 3 quick slots for class abilities, the class expression is not as limited as this would first imply. If anything, it was easier to immerse myself into the fantasy because of all the same options were there, just in new and more intuitive ways. The same applied to having the Dragon Age companions instead of 3. Oh, 2 instead of 3. It seemed like it would have been inherently different for the combat, but it wasn't. I can't take control of them anymore, but it feels like I worked closer with my companions than any other Dragon Age game so far. The radial menu is great for pausing combat and making choices for clearing ads, focusing fire on a boss, or calling for ability use, but I found myself using the shortcut menu even more in conjunction with my own abilities. Neve's ability to freeze time, for example, is basically free damage, but then a lot of abilities will prime an enemy and another will detonate them for extra damage or special effects. So right there is what is maybe why we're hearing some people compare it to Anthem. So there is priming and detonating. Which is like quite literally right out of Anthem. The shortcut menu has clear indicators of what can prime an enemy, allowing us to detonate them or a companion to do so. It didn't feel like I was playing Rook. It felt like I was playing the whole team. Beyond the 3 ability quick slots, I unlocked others the further I got into the game. There is a rune quick slot that changes the effect weapons have in combat, requiring those knowledge sorts of tactical decisions. The rune I had during the preview made our weapons deal ice damage, which would not be effective against the weak to fire Darkspawn, but it did come in clutch against enemies weak to ice but resistance to our standard attacks. Each class also has an ultimate attack that has its own quick slot. As an example, the warrior would perform a flurry of powerful attacks, ending with an almighty elbow drop compared to a WWE wrestler. See, what's interesting here is the other previews are making it sound like, you know, the mage wasn't any good, and it sounds like they were using the mage and messing around with the skills and having a good time. So it might have been a matter of like actually investing in your build instead of just like playing with default settings. I'm not sure. I do always think though, if you're going to play a brand new character in a game, like, hey, I'm switching classes or trying a class for the very first time, they definitely should feel good right out of the gate. All you read was positive. How the F is Game of the Year contender? Probably not true. Come on, Lono. What do you mean, come on, Lono? I'm merely reading the opinion of another person. I'm not sure why you're speaking to me like I said it's a Game of the Year contender. I'm reading Game Rant's article where they think that. I've seen people compare Dragon Age Veilguard's combat to God of War or Mass Effect, and after experiencing it firsthand, I don't see it. Dragon Age The Veilguard is not a classic hack-and-slash game akin to the God of War games, nor does it have the heavier feel that Kratos had in the last 2 games. The last 2 God of War games also focused on the main character in combat, where the companion was just for general support. In Veilguard, it emphasizes playing Rook, but also the whole team, putting together the magic and the steel of Thetis in highly collaborative ways. Meanwhile, it lacks the general game feel of Mass Effect. It's not a scenario of limited abilities and high emphasis on standard gameplay. It's much harder to describe. It feels like Dragon Age The Veilguard gave me more options than any game before it, yet retained the franchise identity in every facet of its gameplay. It doesn't feel like Dragon Age modified, it feels like Dragon Age realized. If you review a game, you should do your best to engage with the mechanics. I don't disagree, but if you pick a mage and like out of the box the mage feels like crap and you have to like level them up to make them not feel like crap, I've never ever been a big fan of that. I've always said like the game should have their characters that feel good out of the box. If you have a mage, a rogue, and a warrior, and the mage feels like garbage until a certain level or until you unlock some skills in the skill tree, I've never agreed with that. Characters should feel good out of the box, and you should enhance and strengthen them as they level. BioWare has already shown a good bit of the prologue in the past previews. Okay, what I didn't see there was a good experience. He appears in my mind. Okay, he's just talking about story here. I wait in the lighthouse, spoke with others. Okay, we know all this. We know how all this works. Exploring the forest was more railroaded than any other zone, but it still let us explore and solve some puzzles off to the side. With Balara, this meant that we could utilize ancient elven artifacts scattered around the forest to open doors, find treasure, and find some of the newly reactivated guardians of the forest. At the end, Balara claims the artifact, but it's not acting right, seemingly setting up a personal arc in Dragon Age Veilguard. We return to Strife. Okay, we enter the village. This is all just descriptive. Here we go. There's no reason to be concerned about how Dragon Age Veilguard can get with its graphics and story. Arlathon was a fresh breath of beauty. This blighted village was a nightmare right out of Dragon Age Origins. A lot of the NPCs were seemingly under some sort of spell, if outright ghouled, and we managed to fight our way through and deal with the mayor. Fittingly, I decided to ship him off to the Grey Wardens. Okay. At the start of this section, I was back in the lighthouse with a new goal. I was also able to explore the lighthouse. We've read about all of this. Okay, memories, another trip. I fought my way through. He reveals, this is all descriptive. What we learned back at the lighthouse. I'm forced to make a big decision. This decision would impact, okay, in the first major boss. Despite this being Act 1, it truly felt like an endgame level decision. The best comparison I could make is that both outcomes felt like letting bull chargers die in Dragon Age Inquisition, but I still had to make the choice. It wasn't a choice with a clear-cut best answer, and either choice would impact Rook and the companions in different ways. BioWare has made it clear in its marketing that the companions are more independent, but nowhere has it been more obvious than how they reacted. I'm super invested in seeing how they react to future choices, especially since this was an Act 1 choice. Mages in RPGs are always a default hard mode till you level them up, and then they're just OP. Yeah, I don't, just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean that's good game design. Handing somebody a mage and having the mage feel like trash until a certain level, I will always argue that's bad game design because it is. Abilities scale, enemies scale, and it's not difficult to make a character scale properly at entrance level difficulty, entrance level enemies. That's not difficult. Pinpointing one, character type and acting like that's okay, I don't agree with that. Well, they're mages. They've always been like that. It doesn't need to be that way. Later on, we finally had all the companions. We could also now use this. We completed this. This is the final section of the preview, and while I skipped the biggest spoilers, there are still plenty of major spoilers here. All right, let's not read the spoilers. Final thoughts. After the preview, I bought a Steam Deck. just for the game, okay? I don't know what else to tell you. That's my final thought leaving the event. I can't wait to play, and I don't want to stop playing till the next time I can get my hands on it. I travel a lot, which means extended time away from my Xbox. I will mainly play it. I don't want to go without it for a day. The fact is, I still have to wait another month. All in all, between the Steam Deck, 2 copies of the game, pre-order collector's editions, well, I'm not going to do the math. I mean, let's be fair here. This seems like somebody who's a massive fan of the game. And I'm thrilled that they had a good time, but that means they're saying it as a game of the year contender. I think that's we have to read that with a slight grain of salt. They're a humongous fan of the game. Going into it, they're a huge fan. Now, that speaks well of the game, though. If you're a big fan as well, and you've been really waiting for this game, maybe you end up feeling the same way as Game Rant, right? It might not be everyone's game. A game made for everyone is a game made for no one, but it's clearly my game. I've waited for it for 10 years, and roughly 6 to 7 hours with it was enough to justify that wait and torture me over the last legs of this wait. Blight take me. I need it to be October 31st already. Yeah, I mean, I like that they admit this. Like, listen, this is their game. So again, if you resonate with this Game Rant article, I think that's going to make you, that'll give you an opportunity to make a very helpful decision and decide whether or not you should dive in, day one. Because in general, I think everybody was really split based off of the trailers and the gameplay showcases, because I just don't think it did a great job of showcasing late game, mid game, end game, all of that. It does sound like it's going to be more action oriented. It's going to be more straightforward, which I actually like, but it also sounds like there's depth there with the skill trees specifically. If that's something that you want to really invest time in and that's something that you really want to do, it's all there and it's all available to you. If that is something that you're really looking forward to, or that's an aspect of the game that you're really hoping to dive in head first with. So, I think these previews put the game not into a game of the year contender status based on everything I read today. I'm looking at a game that'll probably land in, the mid to low 80s on OpenCritic and Metacritic. Not that that's the be all end all, but I do think that that's typically indicative of where the voting ends up landing. The people that vote for these games, that's typically how they vote. They vote in line with where all the Metacritic scores landed, because that's just how it goes. Inverted control off, repeat button press, hold, off, text language, UI text, okay. Alright, vision, we don't need any of that, we don't need any of that, don't need any of that. Okay. Getting ready for our next segment. Oh, and I plugged in a controller, so... Oh, no. Okay. We are going to be checking out God of War Ragnarok on PC in just a second. I feel like we looked at enough previews. I feel like we got, a good little hour-long stream and segment for people to check out. So hang tight with me while I get this set up. Member renewal from Wheel, 16 months. Good morning. Sir, the marketing hurt the game overall. I tend to agree with you. I tend to agree with you. I think that they didn't do the greatest. Oh, it's compiling shaders. We're going to have to wait. So based on what we read, we got a little bit of time here. Based on what we read, where are you guys landing on buy it, skip it? Where did the previews change your interest level at all? Increase, lower? I'm just kind of curious where you guys are right now with the game. Power World versus Nintendo. I hope Nintendo loses. Nintendo is not fighting for copyright of like, oh, our characters look like their characters. They're claiming that they've patented game mechanics, like throwing an item to capture a monster in an open field. I think that that's terrible for gaming. We don't want people patenting game mechanics. What if Dark Souls took that attitude? What if Metroid took that attitude? Like, what if you couldn't have any more Metroidvanias or Souls games or all, you know what I'm saying? Skip for me, skip. Okay, a lot of you guys are saying skip. Some of you are saying pre-ordered. Some of you are saying meh. Assume Parasite says wait for sale. I already pre-ordered. It made you more excited, so Lone Wolf's more excited. I already have the collector's edition. This didn't move the needle for me. JC, you're interested in it. I think some people overrate the impact of marketing. Good games rise to players' attention. Patrick Q with a VIP, never quite been quite the Dragon Age fan. Excuse me. Let me add you to the weekly goal. You guys made a valiant effort to jumpstart it today. There's still time, but we'll see. And I want to make sure and add anybody who does a VIP or a member plus to the total too. You're skipping, Raphael? Okay. I hope fans get a game that does right by their expectations, says Patrick Q. Okay. You're skipping. Oh, Severin says you'll check it out. Okay. All right. Yeah. For me, if I was not a YouTuber, I would not be interested in the game. You know what I mean? I would not be interested in the game if I wasn't a YouTuber. Because I would just look at it and be like, it just kind of looks like a generic, it just looks like a generic RPG. It doesn't look like it has, you know, a whole lot of heart and soul. And I hope I end up being wrong about it and loving it, because I'm only playing it because I'm a YouTuber. If I wasn't YouTubing and checking out like brand new games, I would have seen the latest trailers and been like, the combat does look better. I told you this, guys, a week ago. I was like, well, the combat looks much better. But I still would be like, no, I'm good. It doesn't look like anything new. It doesn't look like anything, you know, it just looks very, you know, it just generic is the word I keep coming back to. Odin says, I think you'll end up liking this. It could be wrong, but after watching you for a while, this seems like your type of game. You could be right, Odin. You really could. Like, the linear focus, I'm all about. I'm hoping that the PS5 Pro can fix the performance issues in Final Fantasy 16 with its performance mode, because like walking around a town was terrible. I really liked Final Fantasy 16 for that reason. Just go from here, go from there, go from here. I don't see the God of War comparison. Yeah, I don't get why people were comparing it to God of War. Boris says, whole lot of talking, not my cup of tea. Dragon Age marketing has always sucked. Sadly, it's not their strong suit. You know what's funny is a lot of games do their own in-house marketing, and some people are really good at it and some are not. And I think this is why a lot of companies outsource their marketing. And this is also why a lot of leaks happen. Like, marketing companies, they're like the leakiest point in the pipeline of your game. If you're wanting your assets and trailers and screenshots and, you know, you're wanting all that stuff to not be seen until the proper moment, I mean, you better pick a really, really good you know, marketing company, because those are the leakiest spots right now. A lot of the times when trailers and screenshots and gameplay leaks, that's where it's coming from. Yo, Sean with 28 months. Dragon Age seems like a decent game. Not expecting it to light the world on fire, but I expect I enjoyed it quite a bit. Anyway, what's good, Lono? Yo, what's good, Sean? Look, a lot of you long-standing members are still at the standard member tier. It's $5. For $6, I can then tell the difference between a gifted member and a paying member. If you are a paying member, you really want to bump up. It's why we only made it $1. It's not about the money. It's about me being able to tell the difference. I do extra content for the people that are paying for their own memberships. Stuff like Green Room, where I might play a game. Stuff like weekend streams, IRL streams, things like that. So we have a big milestone we're trying to hit right now. We're trying to get 600 people at Member Plus and above. And Boris is currently a Member Plus. And the beauty of that is when you renew, it bumps the line for the weekly goal. When you upgrade, I count it as 2. Now, from that point on, it's only 1. I'm not going to always count you as 2. But when you upgrade, I give you guys credit for 2. I put like a doubler on that because I do. We really want to see more and more people doing that. So, those of you who have been hanging with me for a really, really long time, thank you so much for upgrading and supporting the channel. We greatly appreciate it. And for everybody that watches as much as you possibly can, and you're liking and you're listening and you're lurking and you get those gifted, I appreciate the fact that you're able to get that. The PlayStation 30th Anniversary Collection video. Yeah, we watched it. I love it. I think it looks great. I'll probably get the controller. I'm not going to try and get the Pro. They're only making like 12,000 of them. And I don't need the standard version anymore. I already have 2 PS5s. So my interest is in the controller because that controller is actually in Astrobot. I finished the final challenge. Odin Arrow upgrades to Member Plus. That counts as 2, and it bumps the line to 159. You guys could move this so quickly. There are so many of you on a gifted or on the $5 tier, and when you upgrade, man, oh man, you guys could really boost that. Let's see. Yes. No, we don't need any of this stuff. Yeah, we don't need any of this stuff. Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do next. All right. Here's what we're going to do next. We're going to change gears. Okay. We definitely want to check out God of War Ragnarok on PC. A lot of people have been waiting for this. A lot of people have been looking forward to this. All right. We don't do a ton of gameplay on the channel. We usually do something brand new for an hour or so. And then we let that VOD sit. You guys have been massively supportive of gameplay on the channel lately with like Astrobot, The First Descendant, and the like. So let me make it the featured video on the channel. I need to do that because I think this is going to be more in demand from this audience than Dragon Age as well. Joker Quinn gifts a member and just polishes us out to 160, and then Val bumps it to 161 by renewing that member plus. Thank you so much for doing that. All right, let me give you guys a link, and then we are going to redirect. I'll get the sound on here in just a second. Let me get the link. And I'll also send a tweet if you follow me at Reforge Gaming on Twitter. I greatly appreciate that. I know a lot of you guys weren't really vibing with Dragon Age The Veilguard, but you still turned out today to watch the stream and to support me and to gift members. I greatly appreciate that. PC gameplay live. Yeah, let's send this out as well. God of War. God of War Ragnarok. There we go. There we go. You owe us 10. No, I already did the 10 earlier. Yeah, I did the 10 earlier. Let me double check fan funding, but I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, right after Dylan Butler did a 10 bomb, Patrick, and then you did a single, and then I did a 10 bomb. Yes, sir. Thank you for checking. Always double check me and make sure that I've done that because I never want to miss those. All right, I'm going to spam a link in chat. Let me switch. Hang on. Okay. He's breathing heavy. That's sad, Dad. Here we go. Thanks so much for checking out this video. This is going to be my very first time jumping into God of War Ragnarok PC gameplay. I have beat the game on PlayStation 5. I've played through God of War Ragnarok Valhalla gameplay on PS5 as well. Completed it, went all the way through it. It was a wonderful experience. And this game does include that as well. You can see there right on the start menu. If I want to go to Valhalla, I can. We're just going to do the opening. I'm going to be checking performance. I'm on a 2080 Ti rig. I'm not on a monster rig. I would consider my PC to be pretty good. It's, you know, about 4 or 5 years old now. I'm going to end the previous stream where we were looking at the Dragon Age Veilguard previews. I'll be sure to change that thumbnail as well. If you like this kind of content and you like to see gameplay as well as talk shows about them,